On Schoology, okay, all right, all right. On Schoology, you'll see in the film analysis folder, there's some helpful documents. At least I think they're helpful. The first thing is this mise-en-scene textbook that I put up there. That came from my old college textbook. I found it online or whatever. This was my college textbook that I used. This is an updated version of it. This whole chapter is where I got the PowerPoint that we've done the past 2 days, and that was, basically I just went through. Huh? No, I mean I created the PowerPoint, but I used the textbook. I just kind of followed along through that textbook chapter and created the PowerPoint based on that. So that, if you want to go look at more examples, if one of those elements is just really confusing to you, you can find it through there. They've got a ton more examples on there than what I provided. The other thing is these 3 documents are helpful for the analysis side of it, the guide to color, essential viewing cues, and a glossary of traditional symbols. The film analysis example is mine that I did over Almost Famous. I'm going to see about maybe putting the one for Sweeney Todd up there that Kirsten did last year, and maybe possibly Sarah Lovell's that she did over The Lion King, because believe it or not, it was really good. I don't know if she stole it or what, but anyway, it was really good. She got an A on it. So, and the other one was Carson Kaczynski did a really good one, but hers was over Vertigo, and I'm sure none of you have ever heard that. So, no, you're using the same movie. And then finally, the film analysis grading rubric, which is essentially the things that I'm going to be looking for as I'm grading your essay. So if you're as you're writing the essay, if you're I don't know what I'm doing, you can kind of open that and look at it to kind of guide you as far as writing this essay goes. Now, let's take a look real quick at the guide to color one. It's pretty basic, just the idea of what do colors represent within the film. If you happen to have a film where colors are just really important, then this would be a very helpful document to you. For instance, like Saberin is doing The Wizard of Oz. It was the first movie to have color. So color is very important. You've got the ruby slippers, the yellow brick road, the green witch, Yeah. Sounds like you know what you're talking about. Yeah. I mean, that's insight. That's what it takes, is insight. So, you're looking for colors, what do these colors represent? And, and throughout, certain colors or whatever. You've got your yellows, your blacks, your blues, and then different shades of those colors. The one I like to focus on here real quick is red. What red represents: excitement. And then darker red is that's where you're gonna get your sort of passion, maybe a romance kind of thing. The reason I want to focus on that one is because one of the scenes that we're gonna look at here shortly, we're gonna focus a lot on the color red. Red light, green light, yeah. So if you've ever seen The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, The Village, all those M. Night Shyamalan, I don't know. Any of those movies, he uses the color red extensively, typically, which, if you're a big fan of him, I just found out recently that he's going to be in charge of relaunching the Tales of the Crypt, the old TV show from the 90s. Anybody? Yeah, with Crypt Creep. Yeah, they're going to relaunch it, and he's going to be kind of behind it. So, which that could be a good thing or a bad thing if you remember what he did with The Last Airbender. Yes. Yeah. So this one is essential viewing cues. These are the questions that you can try to answer as you are writing your essay. What do you look for within it? These are questions to think of before you watch your movie, after you watch your movie, whatever. But these will also kind of help as you're writing your essay. So once again, these are all just available on Schoology. I just kind of want to go over them real quick. we kind of ran out of time analyzing the scenes last hour, and so I wanted to make sure we kind of went a little quicker this hour. And glossary of traditional symbols. Symbols, as you guys know, is that's one of the main things we're going to be looking for in our film, as far as the analysis side goes. So, you want to pay attention to these types of symbols. And obviously, these symbols correlate with literature. That's one of the reasons that, that I enjoyed film so much. One of the reasons I decided to teach this paper is because when I was taking English classes in college, I would read this poetry and people would just be like, oh yeah, this represents this, and this is the symbology. And I would be like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. It was about a goat, or whatever. And so after I took my film classes, I took Intro to Film, and I took Hitchcock class, and I took a Jesus in Film class. But after I took those film classes, I felt like I had a better grasp on how to analyze not only film, but literature. So it actually correlates really well with literature because it's the same type of symbolism. You're just looking for it on paper instead of on pictures. So yearly cycle, obviously spring always represents birth and youth, and and then winter always represents death. Same thing with the daily cycle where you have dawn and night, when this what those represent, how night represents death, and the end direction, what direction are we looking? If you're going upstairs, a lot of times climbing stairs will represent enlightenment of some kind, of understanding, and the opposite for going downstairs. Nature, running water, what does running water represent there? It represents life. Same thing with the river, the course of a human life. Water is a very interesting symbol because there's so many different symbols with it. You have the idea of birth, rebirth even, with the idea of baptism. I mean, that's what baptism represents, is the idea of being rebirthed. Because when babies are born, that's one of the things that happens is, there's water that comes out with it. And so that's why that kind of represents that. Animals, human body, it's pretty interesting stuff. So one thing that we've not talked about as far as symbolism goes is the phallic symbol. You guys ever know what a phallic symbol is? Yeah. Phallic symbols are used in film. You may not be aware of it. If you're not sure what a phallic symbol is, it is male genitalia is what it represents. If you need a really good example of a phallic symbol, think the Washington Monument. The tower. A lot of times, guns will represent phallic symbols. If you ever go back and watch some the Dirty Harry movies, some of those Clint Eastwood movies, his gun is always bigger. It's not on accident. Makes him look a little more heroic because he has a bigger gun. It was kind of funny when my professor mentioned that in college. He's talking about guns. My first thought was 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie. The very end of it, the Joker shoots the bat plane down with a gun that he pulls from his pants. It's a pistol, and it's ridiculously long. It's just and shoots anyway. So you have those types of things that you can kind of think about. In the movie Sweeney Todd, when I went to see Sweeney Todd, since I knew it was a Tim Burton film, I was kind of thinking I would look for, pay attention for phallic symbols. And if you've seen Sweeney Todd, Beetle the Bard is a character in it who is played by, I can't remember his name, the guy that plays Wormtail in the Harry Potter movies. He has a walking stick. It's about this long that is extendable. Extends. It gets bigger. Okay. Anyway, there and when he talks to the Judge Turpin, who is played by Severus Snape actually, Alan Rickman, he'll get really kind of excited about it, and he'll be like, "Oh, hi, Judge Turpin," and then the stick comes out or whatever. And that gets really bad when there's a scene where there's a guy that has a thing for this girl or whatever. The judge gets him and throws him out of his house, and he goes, he looks at the beetle and he says, "Take care of him." And he's like, "With pleasure." And he gets that stick out and starts beating him with it. So if you think about what that could possibly represent when you're thinking about those representations. And I know like that sounds like bizarre, but it's true. I mean, that's what the symbolism is there behind it. I mean, you can really look for those things. And I bring that up because we're going to look at a couple scenes here in a second that are maybe going to be a little bit interesting. We talked about the grading rubric being on there for you to look at, and also something on there for us to look at, and I think we'll probably just look at this together at some point, is my example. If we had time right now, I'd read it all, but we may do that tomorrow. I don't know. That's true. That is a big thing. I don't know if that's... All right, so this is my essay. Obviously, I've got my, I don't know what happened here. The page number should be over there, but that page number should be down there, and then I've got my heading. You got your name, teacher's name, English 4. He's on this, man. He's sticking with it. English 4. Then the date that it's due. Obviously, this paper was due February 31st last year, so that was good. I have a double title in which I have something that is, this is in reference to the film on the cover of the Rolling Stone, which is one of the things that the band was trying to do throughout the film, is get on the cover of the Rolling Stone. Then I've got a colon, and then an analysis of the film Almost Famous. So this tells you everything that you need to know about what this paper is about. Now, when it comes to writing the essay, forget about your old five paragraph essays, okay? You do need an introduction and a conclusion, but their body does not have to be simple 3 paragraphs. You can expound on those as much as you want. You can divide up the mise en scène into 4 parts, the lighting and the costume and all the 4 parts. Can't think of it for some reason. So I've got my introduction, and then what I kind of focus on is different elements of the film that I wanted to focus on. So my first body paragraph is about Cameron Crowe, who's the director, and some of his films, because they have similar themes and elements going on to it. And then the second paragraph, I focus solely on the music in the film, because music is obviously very important to this film. And then I can't remember what the third paragraph is. I think the third paragraph is where I really focus on the mise en scène and the montage and the motifs and stuff like that. You got to have your last name and the page number, the teacher's name, and the person who wrote it. So if I wasn't the teacher, I guess I should change it, put Mr. Wallace or something. Yeah. Because you're my teacher. If only you had any. So if you scroll down through my paper, you can kind of see like it's a big mess. Like there's a lot to it. I just got onto page 7 is as far as I got. So you're shooting for 5 to 6 pages. I would prefer 6 pages. So you've got a lot of room there to kind of expound on your film, so as you're going through it, if you see a lot of symbolism and stuff that you want to talk about, you've got a lot of room there where you can talk about that stuff, because as you know, 6 pages doesn't fill up real easily. All right. No. If you're familiar with Men in Tights, you'll enjoy this then, because this is the yeah. This is holy crap. Nothing, man. You just at some point you're gonna shut up, I think, but then you just keep going, and I never know when it's gonna end. This is from the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and it's got Kevin Costner in it and Morgan Freeman. If you've not seen it, that's okay. We're just going to pay attention to this scene. We're going to talk about what the symbolism is within the film. Oh, and this one's really quiet. I forgot. Yeah.
Pardon me, teacher, for a real quick announcement. I'd like to announce that tomorrow we will be having Hot Dog Wednesday. So tomorrow, Hot Dog Wednesday, and good luck to the high school basketball teams at O'Keene tonight. Thank you.
Yes, I do, mate. And if you tosspots want to travel through Sherwood Forest, it's going to cost you that gold medallion. It's sacred to me. It's sacred to us too, mate. That there will feed us for a bloomin' month.
You'll have to fight me for it.
You'll have to, mate.
Be careful, Father! You want up 12 of the sheriff's men.
That's so.
All right. We get the sense of it. What are some initial thoughts here? Let's talk about the initial thoughts. What did you see going on here aside from the obvious? Like, yes, they were fighting on the river. Okay, let's talk about symbolism, though. There was running water. What does that represent? Life. Okay? How is that pertinent to what was happening? Very good.
One of the things that I noticed was after he was dunked in the running water, his yielding and giving up and his change of heart.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about that. How many times was Robin Hood knocked into the water? 3, if you count the time with the rope. All 3 times that he goes into the water, like the first time it's fairly shallow, the second time it's a little deeper, and then the third time he's fully submerged. And each time he fights Little John, which is 3 times total, he gets better. The first time he fights him, he's not good at all. Gets beat really quickly. The second time, he actually knocks Little John down a couple times. The third time, he comes up out of the water and actually beats Little John. So he's actually been submerged. And we can talk about what that represents. That kind of, when you're talking about life, the water representing life, where you can, it's almost like a rebirth. He's being born again, that third time especially, because he's coming up out of the water. He's actually fully submerged. The same idea of like baptism. What does baptism represent? Is a new life. And so you have that same sort of idea there with that. So, each time he gets wet, better, right? 3 is typically a magic number. We usually use 3 as kind of a, 3 days, 3 hours, whatever. 3 doors down. All right. 3 days grace. There was actually 4 though, so that's confusing, isn't it? So 3 is kind of a magic number, and so you can kind of see that there as well. What else did you guys notice about symbolism within this? Okay, people were hiding in the forest. How, is that symbolic of something? Okay. The necklace. What does the necklace represent? Yeah, it's obviously an important relic to him, and that's kind of what they're fighting over. Was a prop. Yes, could be a motif. Yeah, it's definitely a motif in the film if you watch the rest of it. Let's talk about, what did we just talk about? This sort of disturbing thing that we just talked about was phallic symbols. Are there phallic symbols in this scene? That was like, as soon as I stopped the movie last hour, it was the first thing, like Shay is sitting there and he's got this smile on his face, and I go, Shay, you got something? He goes, those sticks, man. I was like, yep. Yeah, the phallic symbol there, you have the sticks. Anytime you got 2 guys fighting about something using a big stick, that's typically what that represents. Which one is the bigger man? And that's even like when Little John or John Little first comes out, he has that stick and he like points it at him. And so you're like, you have that idea there. Now, as they're fighting with the sticks, there's also the idea of, I may go too far. When I was in college, we analyzed this scene, and my professor pointed out that water can also represent woman or motherhood, since that's where life comes from, is from the mother. And so he had the idea that right there where John is taking his stick and like stabbing it into the water looking for Robin is almost like you guys with me? All right. Okay. All right, we got there.
Birth from the water
Uh-huh.
to take out John.
Yep.
It's kind of nasty. It's like Zeus.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, right?
There was a scene in a different Robin Hood where Little John's this really big giant guy, and later they're getting drunk in a bar, and this guy asks him, "So why do they call you Little John?" And he looks at him and goes, "What are you getting at? I'm proportionate."
That's funny. All right, so that's the Robin Hood scene. It's fairly, it's fairly basic. It's kind of easy to digest, I think. This one is probably one of the most iconic scenes in all of film history. If you've never seen Psycho, this is Janet Leigh. She's stolen. Oh, okay. She's stolen a large amount of money. And at the beginning of the movie, she is wearing a white bra, which obviously white represents purity. Later, after she's stolen all this money, she's wearing a black bra. So you have that sort of sin has colored her. And then this scene, she has decided, and that's what she's doing here. She's like doing the math. She's decided that she's going to return the money. And so now she's going to go in and take a shower and wash herself clean. Okay? So you have those like sort of iconic ideas there. Now this is Hitchcock, and Hitchcock really played a lot with what was going on in the films and stuff. And so like he also pushed the envelope. So that's one reason I talk about her bra colors, because this was the first time a woman was ever seen wearing a bra in a film. And this was 1960. Now, obviously, we had color movies in 1960, and so this was in black and white on purpose. Oh, I forgot this one's super loud. All right. You guys get the sense of that as well. Hey, are you sleepy today?
I think I got something.
Huh? What do you got, Tommy? I want to hear it. I want to hear what you got.
As the water drained and the water and all the blood was going down the drain, the light was being drained from her.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then the drain transforms into her eye, and then it like the camera is slowly like spinning out from that. So still just like a representation of the life draining away from her. Little fun fact about this movie. The blood in this movie was actually, anybody? Chocolate syrup, yeah. Yeah, chocolate syrup. Since it was black and white, you could use chocolate syrup.
There is roughly 1 gallon of blood in the human body, so that shower would have been Quentin Tarantino.
Mhm.
Would have been a lot more.
So once again, the shower curtain became a motif throughout the film. Like later, she's wrapped up in it and like buried in it. Like he puts her in the trunk of the car and then pushes the car in the lake, and so like the shower curtain kind of comes back as what she's kind of gotten herself wrapped up into. In the middle of her washing, of her purification, she's murdered. And that just kind of denotes this idea of, can we ever really get clean? Can we ever clean ourselves of our past sins and things? And, another fun fact, after this, shower curtains, the sale of shower curtains dropped dramatically and people started switching to glass doors on their showers because they were terrified of somebody coming in. And this was also the first time that music was used in a film to denote the horrific scene. And so like that iconic violin that, that's the first time that was ever used. Alfred Hitchcock really changed the way films were made. So, a lot of things that we kind of take for granted in filmmaking today, he did. If you ever get a chance to watch The Birds, which I know like by today's standards, The Birds is not terrifying, but it does have its creepy elements. I mean, yeah, the birds that come and attack people.
The bear.
There's scenes where like people are running and they've got like very obvious fake birds on their shoulders and they're just like, it's like it's kind of silly by today's standards, but the way that it's filmed, there is not a single bit of music in that entire movie, and it gives it this sort of unsettling, creepy feeling. Except for there's one scene where this lady's like walking outside of a school and there's a choir of children inside singing this song. And as they're singing it, the birds are like gathering on the playground by this lady. Oh, dude, that part is so creepy. But so Hitchcock was pretty famous for this dead eye, which we saw in The Drain and then transformed to the woman's eye. That's pretty famous. Almost every Hitchcock movie, you'll see the example of the dead eye within one of his films. Hitchcock had a lot of things. I've got 2 Hitchcock books in my closet back there. So. If any of you were actually doing a Hitchcock movie, I would loan them to you, which I've only had one so far. Carson did Vertigo last year. It was really good. This is probably my favorite example of a movie to analyze. This is American Beauty, if any of you guys have seen American Beauty or not. It is... It's kind of a twisted idea because, Lester Burnham, who's played by Kevin Spacey, kind of lives a lackadaisical life. That is up until the moment that he meets his 17-year-old daughter's best friend, who is also 17, and he instantly becomes very lustful for her. And I know it's like, it's creepy. But that's the catalyst that changes his life. This is the opening monologue. And right here at the beginning, like we'll talk about all these like sort of representations in this movie, but pay attention to the color red. Unfortunately, I have to fast forward part of it because there's a weird little scene in there that. Sure, thank you.
My name is Lester Burnham. This is my neighborhood. This is my street. This is my life. I'm 42 years old. In less than a year, I'll be dead. Of course, I don't know that yet. And in a way, I'm dead already.
All right, I'll skip past that part where he's putting on his shoes.
That's my wife, Carolyn. See the way the handle on those pruning shears matches her gardening clogs? That's not an accident. That's our next door neighbor, Jim. And that's his lover, Jim.
You spoiled her. It's me, no Bart. Come inside now. Morning, Caroline.
I love your tie, that color.
I just love your robe.
All right. I don't want to really focus on the sort of creepy nature of this, but definitely focus on on what Lester is doing here in this scene. Notice that. Notice where he is in between this conversation, right in the middle of it, but where he is. Yeah, there's a red door. The red roses are the big part, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But notice here where he is. The vertical lines that are trapping him in. Jail cell. That's what vertical lines are typically going to represent. Even though it is a window, but that's where he's like chosen to stand. And notice how there's life going on out here. His wife is out doing some gardening. His neighbors are outside talking about their dog. Now they're having a conversation, and he is just this silent observer. He's not actually experiencing life. And that's what he's trying to point out in his monologue as he's talking. And he says, in a lot of ways, I might as well already be dead, because the way that he's living life, he's separated, he's detached, he's trapped by the things that he thought that he once cared about. All right, let's keep going here.
She wasn't always like this. She used to be happy. We used to be happy. My daughter Jane. Janie's a pretty typical teenager. Angry.
Okay.
Insecure.
She's like looking at boobs on her computer, so fast forward that
I
part.
wish I could tell her that's all going to pass. But I don't want to lie to her.
Honey, are you trying to look unattractive? Yes. Congratulations, you succeeded admirably. Lester, could you make me a little later, please? Because I'm not quite late enough. Nice going, Dad.
Both my wife and daughter think I'm this gigantic loser. And they're right. I have lost something. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I know I didn't always feel this sedated. But you know what? It's never too late to get it back.
All right. I always try to pause this perfectly, because this final scene here, obviously this is him at work, and once again, notice the vertical lines where he is imprisoned by his choices. He's imprisoned by his house. If you guys paid attention to the very opening scene where he's kind of flying in over the neighborhood, and you have those perfect lines of the streets, everything is sort of just these vertical lines within his life. Everything's kind of trapping him. Very carefully. It was all planned out. Like I said, it takes planning. This is a movie that I actually have watched with the director's commentary. So if you have the DVD, highly recommend it. Turn on the director's commentary and watch it with the director's commentary. Because this one, the director talked about all this stuff. He talked about how, this was on purpose. And that's where I got a lot of the insights from this, was from watching the director's commentary. The roses obviously aren't quite a motif yet, but they do become a motif later. As I said, he gets a crush on his daughter's best friend, and later he fantasizes about her, and there's a scene where she's cheerleading, and she just stops and pops open her sweater, and all these roses come out, all these rose petals just come flowing out. And there's another scene later where he's laying in bed and just fantasizing about her, and it pans up to the ceiling, and there's red rose petals falling on his face and stuff, and then it pans up to the ceiling, and she's naked on the ceiling, but has everything covered by rose petals, and they're just slowly falling off onto him. So you have those the way the color red and the idea of what what do roses represent? They represent romance and passion and things like that, and so the color red ties into that. What?
Romance is creepy.
Yeah, no, I know. But that's the twist of it. This is a twisted story, and so you take that idea of what romance and passion is to us, and you twist it. And you make it just a little bit creepy. And later, the color red is actually very pertinent with blood. So, Um, I mean, he tells you that he's going to be dead in less than a year, so I thought that was kind of obvious. So you have the elements here as you're kind of going through, and I can talk about this movie for a long time. The scene after this is really good. He goes in to talk to his boss, and they use camera angles there. His boss is at this big desk, and they film from above to make him look even bigger. Or sorry, from below to make him look even bigger. And then Lester is on the other side in like a tiny chair, and they film him from above to make him look even smaller. Like he looks like a second grader in the principal's office. It's a great scene, though, because, you have that sort of idea. And plus, I think he says the F word a couple times, so I can't really show it to you anyway. In a different context, actually. The final scene that we're going to watch is from a movie called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. If you've seen it, I congratulate you on witnessing one of the greatest works of art. If you haven't, do. I think it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime or something. It's on one of those, or both of them. Anyway, Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet in this one. Basically, the premise of it is Kate Winslet and Jim Carrey are dating, and then Kate Winslet, they get into a fight, and she just takes off, and she finds this place where you can actually go in and have your memories burned out of people. They'll find some specific things, map out your brain, and remove those memories of people. Now, they're like fragmented, and so you'll see the fragmentation of that throughout the montage that we're going to watch here. But eventually, Jim Carrey, so overcome with this, he goes and sees her again, and she has no idea who he is. And so he's so overcome with this that he goes to have his memories of her burned out. And as the memories are being burned out, he realizes that he doesn't want them burned out. He wants to save them. And so he's constantly going and trying to stop them from doing this, but he can't because he's just like asleep or whatever. And so they find, they keep burning out these memories of him. And this is the final memory that they're burning out. And this is the first time that he met. Her name's Clementine in this movie. So this is the first time he met Clementine. And you can kind of see the way that the memory is dissolving and what's going on there. So I know it's kind of an interesting premise for a film, but it's so beautifully done. It's a great love story. Elijah Wood's in it, and he's always talking about this ring. Anyway, here we go. That was a joke. He's not.
Come back and make up a goodbye at least. Pretend we had one. Why, Joel?
All right. Oh, we already watched that one. So there with that scene, like you do have like the crumbling of the house and stuff. So you have those like, you know, the image of the crumbling memory. But let's talk about the montage that we saw there.
I have no idea what I just watched.
Okay. Let's talk about the lighting. At least you can.
Dark.
Very dark, right?
It was like small, like bright lights.
Small lights focused on the people, right? On the actors. And that's, you know, that's significant because what they're trying to do is focus you on him because the memories are fading away. They're being burned away. And so there's only really him left. Yeah. Yeah. And so everything's kind of being removed there. And then that final part where he's leaving the house, because that's what he did in the memory, you know, he took off, got in the car with his buddies or whatever, and they're kind of talking to him. And you have that montage there of the flashes of the different scenes. Those are the fragments of his memories, of what he has left of her. Because, you know, as they're being burned away, just little pieces are left. And so he's got these just fragments, these brief little, and so you have like the scene where he wakes up, jumps up out of bed, and there's like sand. And that's that, you know, the connection to the beach. And as he's driving, he sees like the bookstore flash by, which is from earlier in the story where he went and talked to her at the bookstore or whatever. And so you have all of these, like, you know, that's what that montage represents. It's a series of cuts, you know, those quickly cut together pieces where it's just showing you that this is the end of his memories of her. Seriously, guys, watch this movie. You'll love it.
Okay, freshwater represents life. Does seawater represent death, drowning, suffocation?
It can.
That was my main thought.
Yeah, it can.
It's an ocean that's washing away his memories and killing him.
Yeah. Very much could be. All right. Tomorrow, we'll probably take a look at my film analysis essay. Since it's a shorter day, we may or may not get into the literature books, but that's kind of like, that's my introduction to the film analysis thing. So I want you guys to start thinking about how you can structure your essays, how you can write your essays. You're going to have essentially about a month and a half to write them. All right, it'll be due close to the end of February. I think last year I had them due on my birthday for some reason. I guess I just wanted to punish myself on my birthday. So that's kind of what you need to start planning is that, you know, it's going to be 5 to 6 pages. And so you need to kind of start thinking about that. If you're really lost, try to Google your movie and see if there's any kind of insight that other people have, if you can, you know, find an analysis or whatever. And I don't want to read your copy and pasting abilities. I want to read how well you can write. Okay, even if you take copy and paste it and change like every third word, that's still not your writing. Okay, no matter what Taylor Johnson tries to convince me of, it's not your writing. All right. Okay, so kind of keep those things in mind. Okay. I can stop wearing this damn thing now.